Okay, guys, I guess we'll go ahead and we're ready to start. My name's Joe Ziegler. I'm the technical evangelist for ANZ. You can see that's my Twitter handle up there. Feel free to follow me, guys. If you're interested in some of the stuff that Amazon's doing, I'll try to tweet out important events such as this webinar and the Lunch and Learn series that we're having on. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk a little bit about AWS 101. This is our introductory course. We're going to give you some ideas about what Amazon is doing and what is cloud computing. So this is our plan for today. First, I'm going to do an introduction on Amazon Web Services. Then I'd like to go in and tell you why enterprises are rapidly adopting the cloud. A little bit more about what is Amazon Web Services when we talk about Amazon Web Services. What are the building blocks that we provide? Some of the unique benefits that you'll find if you decide to use Amazon Web Services, a few of our success stories, and then I'll go into some popular myths that are circulating about cloud computing. So let's get started. So who is Amazon.com? I think maybe many of you have heard about Amazon.com being the very large e-tailer or retailer. We started off actually as a very large bookstore. And then we diversified into other types of products such as electronics and music and games. We're actually three different businesses. On one side, we're a consumer business, and that is actually our retail business that a lot of people are familiar with, and that's Amazon.com. We also have a seller's business. The seller's business is a platform in which we allow other people to sell through our e-commerce site. For example, in the U.S., you'll get Kenneth Cole, and Target.com that use us to sell through our site. And then we've got Amazon Web Services. And Amazon Web Services, that is our IT infrastructure business. That's what we're going to be talking about a bit today. And let me go into some details about that. Well, first of all, how did we get here? How did Amazon get into cloud computing? Well, to grow to be one of the largest electronic merchants on the web, Amazon had to build up many core competencies. We had to build very highly scalable, secure businesses and computer systems that allow us to actually be able to ship out our products to meet our customers' expectations. Behind that capability lie years and years of experience in providing technical services to the businesses to ensure that our online stores were secure, fast, and always available and capable to meet huge seasonal demand. So after about a decade of building and running Amazon.com, which is one of the world's largest e-commerce websites, Amazon realized it had developed a core competency in operating highly scalable, highly reliable technical infrastructure. So the company embarked on a much broader mission of serving a new customer segment, developers and businesses, with a web platform of services they can use to build sophisticated and scalable applications. And that's AWS, or Amazon Web Services. So who are some of our global customers? Well, we literally have hundreds of thousands of customers in over 190 countries across the world. And this is since we first launched in 2006. So we've got anywhere from small startups to big startups to government agencies to enterprises and governments running on us. And in fact, we're in over 190 countries around the world. And you'll recognize some of these global brands, such as Samsung, Shell, Unilever, Hitachi, and Netflix. We've got many successful startups around on us. For example, Dropbox and Pinterest, and more than 300 government agencies around the world using us, including NASA. The U.S. government uses us quite a bit. We've got over 300 of them on board right now. And why are they using us? What are the reasons for cloud adoption? What are customers telling us? Well, a very important benefit of using cloud infrastructure is the ability to trade in capital expenditure for a variable expenditure. And this is a very powerful business proposition for most customers who do not want to outlay capital to be able to use compute services, or may want to use their capital to create other types of services or invest in different types of benefits for their customer base. This means that customers can divert investments to areas that are critical to businesses, such as investing in marketing, hiring more resources, training existing employees, building relationship with partners, and developing new products and solutions that can delight the customer. So what do I mean by this trade of CapEx for a variable expenditure? Well, when you work with us, when you subscribe to Amazon Web Services, you have no initial investments. right? There is no upfront fees for us. There's no termination fees, right? We have no commitments. Many of our services can be consumed on demand. We have a clear pricing model on the website. So everything that you actually consume, you can actually go to our website. You can see exactly what the cost is going to be. And we even have all the costs and the discounts if you consume in some larger fashion. And not only are customers able to trade CapEx for variable expenditure, but they have a lower ongoing cost for that cost of IT. And that's because of our massive amount of scale. Our scale allows us to constantly reduce our costs. And in fact, since launch in 2006, we've actually lowered our costs a total of 27 times. Now, I'll give you some idea of how big our scale is and why we're able to return these savings to our customers. I'll give you an interesting data point. If you look back at Amazon.com, the actual retailer, in the year 2003, that company was about a $5.2 billion company, had about 8,000 employees, and just an amazing amount of servers in order to be able to meet their customer base. Today, at AWS, every single day, we add to our capacity the same amount of compute power that Amazon.com had in 2003 when it was serving that customer base. Every single day, when it was a $5 billion global business. Another idea is take a look at some of our customer base. Customers such as Netflix. Netflix, a very large U.S. Streaming video service. It has recently become the #1 cable provider in America. At its peak traffic, it actually consumes nearly 25% of the U.S. internet traffic. And that's only one of our thousands of customers. Also, as we lower these prices, we've done this without any type of competitive requirement to lower these prices. These are ongoing permanent price reductions that we pass on to our customers. And you don't even have to do anything to actually get the price reduction. You don't have to sign up for us. It's not a special deal. It is a price reduction which is spread across all of our customer base, and they automatically are able to benefit from that. And this comes from a little bit from our DNA. We come from a retail background. We believe this is a high volume, low margin business, and the higher our volumes get, the more our efficiencies get, and the more we can actually offer cost savings to our customers. And this creates a virtuous cycle. The more people that we are able to bring onto our platform, the more that we're able to sell AWS services, the more we can invest into infrastructure. We get more economies of scales, and we put that back into lowering our costs, and then we're able to get more customers. We have a lot of customers that have significantly lowered their costs with AWS. For example, Samsung saved over $34 million in a capital X expenditure for their Smart Hub project. Commonwealth Bank in Australia has saved tens of millions of dollars by using applications on AWS. Reuters has saved between 40 to 50% in OpEx by taking advantage of our high-volume, low-margin business. So besides costs, what are some of the other benefits that I can talk to from AWS? Well, elastic capacity, or elasticity as we say. What do I mean by elastic capacity? Well, you don't have to guess capacity as you would with a traditional IT infrastructure. With us, you can scale up, and importantly, you can scale down in minutes. You can just pull this extra capacity from the AWS cloud as you need it. And when you're done using it, this is very important. You can return that capacity back to us. It means you are no longer paying for that capacity. You don't need to provision anything. You don't need to plan ahead with us. You don't have to call us and say, hey, I'm going to consume this many servers. I need to set up this kind of contract with you guys to have this kind of capacity available. It's literally all on demand as you need it. This means you can optimize your resources completely based upon your needs. You can handle that spiky workflow. You can deal with that holiday e-commerce traffic. You can deal with that event that's going to happen next weekend without having to provision all this server capacity. You don't have to give us any type of warning whatsoever. You can pull that capacity in as you need to. And you can easily manage unexpected peaks. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's talk about this in a bit of the graphic terms. So traditionally, in your traditional IT on-premise environment, you have a certain amount of capacity that you need to meet. In order to meet this capacity, you're going to have to provision servers, And if you see this kind of faint white line I've got on the graph right now, you're going to need probably some amount above your peak capacity because you need some contingency. Maybe 15% is pretty common. If we take a look at these different types of usage patterns, you're going to have to provision above that blue line in order to meet all your customers' needs. So in an on and off environment, perhaps you have to run during the day. You can turn things off at night. A fast growth environment, you could see that can model a startup that gets very popular or is perhaps featured on something like Mashable or TechCrunch. Variable peaks, maybe you've got a customer-facing application that you're not even sure what kind of usage you're going to get. Or even predictable peaks. Maybe you've got compute capacity serving your internal customers, your own staff, and your own users that need this during the day, and then maybe at night they're not using it, consuming so much capacity. Well, the problem with this in kind of the traditional and the old school world is no matter what you're going to do, you're going to have waste. Why are you going to have waste? Because you're going to have enough server capacity to meet that peak usage of your users. And that capacity, when it's not being used, is just money thrown away, right? This is money that you're spending on cooling these servers. These are support contracts for software that you might not actually be using at the time. And even worse, if you look on that left-hand side, what happens if you don't have enough capacity? What happens if you have consumers that are trying to actually hit your website, or if you've got your own users that need to consume your capacity and you don't have enough server power at that time? This means you're going to have poor service for your customer base. You're not going to be able to meet your business requirements. So when we talk about elasticity, we mean that through the cloud and through the AWS, you can provision exactly what you need at the time that you're going to consume it. And that means your actual usage pattern is going to closely mirror your needs. So in an on and off environment, for example, you can provision from us, and when you're not using us, you can return that directly to the cloud. In a fast growth environment, as your user base is growing, you can pull in more server capacity as you need to. Or really, if you think about a spiky workload or a variable workload in which you don't even know your usage pattern, you can automatically scale up and down on us. Even without any type of human intervention. Use them throughout the day and then turn them off at night. We have several customers who have, for example, development environments. And the development environment might have many servers because they have a very complex topology for the production environment. And they turn it off at 7 o'clock when everyone goes home. And they're no longer paying for that environment. They return all that capacity back to us, and there's no more compute charge. This is going to bring you a huge cost savings to your operational expenditure. And it's a value proposition that very few businesses can afford to ignore. So the fourth thing I want to talk about is quick and easy deployment. And the interesting thing is with AWS, everything within our infrastructure can be automated. You can actually provision everything that you want to provision through us. You can do it through a web UI. I'll talk about it a little bit. But you can pull up server capacity. You can deploy databases just as you need to. Or even better, you can automate your own environment. And we've got a great customer that's within Australia. It's called News Limited, for example. In their traditional IT infrastructure, it would take them 54 days and 6 teams of people in order to provision their production environment. After going over to AWS and employing tools, being able to use our automation, being able to use our reusability, they were able to bring that provisioning time down from 56 days to 6 hours, and from 6 teams into a click of a button. And that means developers could innovate. They could actually provision their entire environment on their own. Think about how much faster and how much more agile that organization is going to be now. Where in the old world, a developer would need a copy of the production environment. It would take almost 2 months in order to provision that. 2 months and 6 teams, down to 6 hours. And what are those 6 teams able to do now? Those 6 teams, instead of provisioning production environments, are able to work to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. Now, we had a recent study, this was commissioned by us on IDC, that shows that developers, while working on the AWS environment, actually increase their proficiency by about 507%. So developers are now able to, are empowered to actually create their own environment. They're empowered to experiment. So if they can think about it, as a developer, I can actually provision a database immediately to see and to test out my own code. I can try and see what it's like to run my code across maybe different web servers. I can test behind a load balancer, for example. All of this leads to something really important, right? All this leads to the increased innovation of your organization. You can experiment often, and this is quite important. I have had my own development teams before. I've wanted to try out different database configurations. For example, in AWS, if I wanted to, I can provision a database using more memory. Does this speed up my application? How about if I provision a database that's using faster drives? How hard is that to do? I can make multiple copies of this databases, just in a click of a button. What if I want to develop across a very large machine, or to see if I have a cluster of many small machines? As a developer, maybe I want to try some new software. IBM perhaps has a software that I want to try out. Do I have to call up IBM? Do I have to set up a trial? Do I have to buy a license to do that? You don't have to with AWS. You can actually launch enterprise software, even for an hour, so you can experiment with that. Try out what the latest Oracle database has to offer. Compare Microsoft products to open source products. Developers have that ability to experiment often at a very low cost. And so we say that you can fail fast, and importantly, you can fail forward. You can know what works and what doesn't work, because experimentation isn't going to cost you much. Perhaps just 1 hour of compute, for example. And this allows you to innovate. This allows you to find out exactly how your software can work, what are the best configuration options, what are the best things that are available on a marketplace, for example. This means that your business can focus in on what your business is trying to do. You can focus in on differentiating yourself in the marketplace. You can focus on your core competencies. No matter what, is your business selling database maintenance, or is your business actually building something? We call this undifferentiated heavy lifting. This means that no matter how good your IT is, it's just keeping the lights running, right? It's not innovating on behalf of your customers. Let us do that for you. Let us manage your databases. Let us help you provision your own production environments very quickly. This way you can focus in on building your products. This is so you can focus in on innovating for your customer base. And stop spending all this time on this undifferentiated heavy lifting. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a recent study, a recent Gartner study that said that for most IT departments, and this is for big enterprises generally, they spend about 70% of their time just on routine tasks of maintaining the data centers, and only 30% of the time is actually innovating. That means that you're just spending 70% of your time just standing in place, just to make sure that the lights are staying on, the same lights that everybody else, every other company in the world has in a utility type market, instead of actually spending time creating new products for your customer base. And these are scarce IT resources. These are resources that you could use to really, really innovate, to improve your business, instead of just keeping these lights on and just keeping the status quo. So what do? We take care of the data centers, the power, the cooling, the networking, racks, server, storage, labor. You can even license through us for different products on a per-hour basis. And all of that comes into that same low hourly rate that you pay, for example, when you pay for our compute instances. This means you don't need to buy and install new hardware. You don't have to upgrade your data center. When new technology comes out, you can relaunch your instances and take advantage of bigger and faster machines, all at a click of a button. Another advantage you get with AWS is you can actually go global in minutes. And I'll talk a little bit later in the webinar about regions and availability zones and edge locations. But we have a global footprint. We have data centers literally around the world. And you'll be able to deploy to any of these data centers as you want to. You write one application for one data center, you can deploy it to another data center. We have many customers, big customers, small customers that are able to reach a global customer base, regardless of where they're located themselves within the world. So what is all this? What are we talking about here? What is Amazon Web Services? Well, let me kind of switch gears here and talk a little bit about what we offer and what's available to you if you want to use us. Well, what we are is reliable, scalable, low-cost infrastructure. Right? We provide compute building blocks, for example, database, networking, content delivery networks, all the important building blocks you need to put together to build your IT infrastructure. And you can pick what you want. This is not an all or nothing proposition. We have many customers who pick and choose a la carte what services they want to use. They might combine it with their own on-premises current investments in their own IT infrastructure. It's totally up to you. We're very flexible when it comes to that. And every service that we offer is available via an API, which means you can automate and you can take advantage of infrastructure as code. So a little bit about our global footprint. So one important concept we have is the concept of a region. And we've got 9 of these regions around the world. A region is a geographical area in which we offer our services. And so we've got several regions you can see on this map in the United States. We have a region in South America, Europe, Japan, Singapore, and a region in Australia. We also have a special region. It's up there in red. That's the GovCloud region. That's built specifically for the U.S. government. If you use our infrastructure, you will probably not be able to see that region. We have over 300 U.S. agencies right now that are taking advantage of that secure, scalable web infrastructure in America. On top of this concept of regions is this concept of an availability zone. And you notice there's several availability zones in each region. What is an availability zone? You can think of an availability zone as a cluster of data centers, which are actually networked together with inexpensive, low latency networking, low latency connectivity. What this allows you to do is you can actually build and you can design your application to scale across these availability zones, so that in the unlikely event something were to happen to an availability zone, your application can actually continue to run and be durable across any type of an event. So if you take a look, for example, if you see Australia there in the bottom right, you see there's 2 availability zones. You can actually have a database and web servers, for example, sitting in one availability zone, and more web servers and a hot standby database sitting in the other availability zone. And that way, if anything happened to one of those zones, you could fail over. And these different availability zones, they're in different physical buildings. They have multiple connectivity to the internet, backup generators. They're going to be on a seismically stable planes, different flood plains, just to provide you that type of durability. If you can imagine, in the traditional infrastructure, how much work it would take to actually be able to build your own infrastructure across 2 different data centers that are geographically separated. In addition to regions and availability zones, we have a concept of an edge location. Currently, as of today, we have 39 edge locations around the world. These edge locations serve off 2 specific services that we have available. The first service is CloudFront. It is a content delivery network. This will allow you to distribute content, dynamic content, static content, streaming video around the world, close to your users. We also have a programmable domain name service, or DNS service, called Route 53. Both of these services are highly available, and by having this global infrastructure, this will actually bring these services close to your customer base wherever they are on the globe. So moving on from the global infrastructure, let me talk a little bit about, what is the Amazon Web Services universe. At a very high level, you've got 4 different ways in which you can interface with us. We have a web console in which you can actually just go to. You can go to that web console right now. It's aws.amazon.com and interact with all of our services. But importantly, too, we have command line tools so that you can script against the command line. And all of our services are also available in APIs and SDKs, which means your programmers can automate and reuse your code over and over again. This way you can create tested infrastructures. You can actually automate huge amounts of provisioning. We've got customers, for example, Pinterest in the U.S., who have their entire infrastructure completely automated. And as their usage goes up and people are starting to use a lot of their web services, it actually brings up all their infrastructure automatically. And then at night, when people are using it less, it actually returns that capacity back to the cloud, so they're not paying for us. So everything that you're going to see and interact with can be automated. So let me talk about some of the cross-services features. And I'm not showing all the different services here. We have well over 30 different types of services that are available, and more services are launching every month, actually. But to give you an idea, some of these cross-service features that are available, for example, We've got CloudWatch, which is our monitoring tool. It runs across our entire infrastructure, and you can use that to monitor the different server compute instances, for example, or the different the content delivery network, for example. We have a simple notification service, SNS. It's a publish and subscribe service in which you can publish events to a serial bus, for example, and you can pull off and process those events. We have a highly available workflow service, simple workflow service. Elastic Beanstalk is a container service in which if you've got a web-facing application and it's written in Java, .NET, Ruby, Python, and we just recently launched Node.js container, you can deploy that to us and we will take care of all that infrastructure for you. CloudFormation allows you to automate everything. It's a scripting language. It's written in JSON. You can script out everything within the AWS universe with the scripting language. And IAM, Identity and Access Management, allows you to create granular controls for the different services. You can interface it within your own on-premises identity infrastructure, for example, Active Directory or LDAP. And we've got some platform building blocks, for example. We have Redshift, which is a highly scalable, highly available data warehousing product. We have SQS, Simple Queuing Service, in which you can build loosely coupled service-oriented architectures which are tied together through the queuing service. RDS, Relational Database Service. This is a hosted database service. It's a full version of SQL Server, MySQL, and Oracle databases, and you can choose what flavor you want to use. We will manage this database service for you. We will help you scale it up and down. We'll patch it for you. We'll back it up and help you make it highly durable. Simple Email Service, or SCS, allows you to send out millions of email messages in which you don't have to scale up a mail server. And personally, I've had to do that before in my own infrastructure. And a mail server is a tough thing to scale up. You don't have to worry about that with SCS. It's very cost conscious. You know, it's very price sensitive. Cloud Search is a product that's built upon A9. Amazon.com uses it. AWS uses it. It allows you to scale up and to do search. Search is hard. Search takes a lot of heavy lifting. It takes a lot of technical skills in order to run. But with Cloud Search, it's very easy. DynamoDB, a NoSQL database, and it actually has provisioned throughput. You tell us how fast you want DynamoDB to run, and in the background, we will scale that across different machines. We'll shard out that information. We'll spread it across SSDs, and we will provide you the same read and write capacity in which you ask for. And CloudFront, I talked about that a little bit before. CloudFront is our content delivery network. You put different types of content on CloudFront. You can put dynamic content, you can put static content, streaming content, and we will send that to those edge locations all around the world. And EMR, Elastic MapReduce, that's our big data product. That's managed Hadoop. If you've ever had to do big data, if you've ever had to create your own Hadoop clusters, you know this is a very difficult task. It takes a lot of work in order to bring up Hadoop and to maintain those clusters. Using a product such as EMR means that these precious IT resources, these data scientists, are using that data, and they're asking questions of that data. They're not actually managing the infrastructure in order to be able to do their work. And then at the lowest level, we have infrastructure building blocks. And these are the base services that we talk about a lot. Virtual Private Cloud, or VPC. This allows you to carve out a portion of our own cloud and make it look like your own data center. So as an enterprise, you have the ability to extend your data center into the cloud using this product. And this way you can create your own IP subnets, your own routing cables, your own internet gateways, and such that it looks like your own network topology. Glacier is our cold storage product, in which you can actually store stuff, data into our cloud environment as little as 1 cent per gigabyte. EBS is Elastic Block Storage. You can attach that to your compute instances. You can provision. You can tell us how many IOPS you want to be able to perform. We recently launched some provision IOP products on that, and you get tens of thousands of IOPS when rated together. And Simple Storage Service, or S3. This is our object storage service. It provides 11 nines of durability. And you wonder yourself, well, what does 11 nines of durability mean? It means basically if you store 1 million objects with us, on average, you could possibly lose one every 100,000 years. And to date, we've never lost any type of object in S3. If you've ever used a product such as Dropbox, Dropbox runs entirely on AWS and heavily leverages S3 in the background. And then EC2, Elastic cloud compute. This is our compute, our server capacity. And you can provision these EC2 instances in a variety of different flavors. We have high memory instances, high I/O instances, high CPU instances. We have cluster compute instances. We even have the ability to launch GPUs, for example, if you're doing types of rendering and that kind of processing. Bringing this all together, this is the entire Amazon Web Services universe. And there's many more than these that I was able to go through at this very, very high level. You can go to our website and kind of dig down into it. At the end of this presentation, I will be able to take some questions if you've got any questions about those services, or you'll be able to contact us and we can dive deeper into anything that you're interested in. So what is unique about Amazon Web Services? What do customers tell us that they want from us? Well, first of all, we do come from this retail environment, and a high volume, low margin business is part of our fundamental DNA. This is how Amazon.com grew to be a multi-billion-dollar business, and this is the same function that we operate under. As we get better at what we're doing, as we're able to perform at higher volumes, our costs go down, and we pass these costs on to you. Now, this is a little bit different than traditional IT companies, and it's a bit of a different mindset. We keep our pricing low, and we continue to innovate on top of that. Flexibility. Customers tell us flexibility is very important to them. You have a complete freedom of choice from running on top of AWS. We support multiple operating systems. So we have different versions of Windows that you can run on top of us that you license per hour from us. You can run Microsoft 2012, Server 2012, for example. Linux, we have different flavors of Linux that you can run on top of us. We have Red Hat, we have Ubuntu, we have CentOS. We even have our own distribution of Linux that we've optimized to run inside of our environment. And multiple software platforms. We're partners with SAP, IBM. We have the complete Oracle stack available on top of us. We have multiple open source software packages pre-built that you can run on top of us. I talked a little bit about our relational database product, or RDS. That comes in different flavors. You can launch that in Oracle, MySQL, or SQL Server, for example. We have absolutely no agenda. You can run any type of software on top of AWS that you can run on any x86 platform. And we have granular pricing options. Okay, what do I mean by granular pricing options? Well, we have a few different ways that we charge for our services. First of all, for servers, we charge per hour. These are on-demand servers. So you can launch an instance on top of us. You're only going to commit to a 1 hour charge on that, and then you can turn that instance off, and there's no more charge for that whatsoever. So you can, if you want to, see what it's like to launch a supercomputer. Try that out for 1 hour. For storage, we charge per gigabyte per month. So when we talk about using S3, Simple Storage Service, or we talk about Glacier, or if you have an elastic block storage volume attached to your EC2 instance, you'll be charged per gigabyte per month. We also charge for data transfer. However, we do not charge for data transfer into our service. This is only for data transfer out. So if you're looking at, for example, a disaster recovery model, and you have a lot of data that you want to send into us, we do not charge for any of that incoming inbound data. We also have discounted data transfer pricing between our different regions. And all of these resources you can turn on and off. There is no commitment to use any of these resources. Our content delivery network, for example, many people in this space might charge a contract or a minimum spend in order to use our content delivery network. We do not. You absolutely just pay for what you use. And we have to keep innovating. We have to keep convincing you every hour that we're the best choice for you for your cloud environment. Because you're not trapped. You're able to walk away from us at any point in time that we don't meet your expectations. Rapid innovation. So originally, I talked about we launched in 2006. We launched in some very basic service, simple storage service. In 2009, you can see we actually launched 48 services. Recently, in 2012, we launched 158 services. So not only are we launching services every year, we're launching more services every year. As we innovate and we build, we're able to build faster and better. And in fact, we're even using AWS to make AWS better. And this year alone, we've already launched more services. For example, just recently, we launched our managed DevOps service, OpsWorks. late last year, we launched Redshift, data warehousing in the cloud, data pipeline. In fact, if you just take a look at our website, you'll see that pretty much every week and maybe almost every day, we launch a new feature or a new service. We have a global partner ecosystem. So you'll recognize many of these names in our partner ecosystem. When it comes to system integrators, for example, we have the big consulting companies, Capgemini, Deloitte, Wipro. We also have a lot of regional partners, for example. So if you're in a particular part of the world, you can reach out to us and we can connect you to either a global partner or even a local partner. You'll recognize some of these software providers, Red Hat. We have enterprise Red Hat available on top of us. Heroku's environment runs on top of us. We're a strong partner with Microsoft. We sell many, many Microsoft licenses through the SPLA model, for example. And we've got the AWS Marketplace. And the AWS Marketplace is actually quite interesting. You can go to our marketplace. You can go to it right now if you want to. It's marketplace.aws.amazon.com is one of the addresses to get to it. You can launch enterprise software on top of us on a per-hour basis. This is a pre-packaged template that you can launch into a different EC2 instance depending on your need. So, for example, you can even launch HANA 1, big SAP in-memory database. You can launch this. It's a fee of 99 cents licensing fee, and then on top of the normal EC2 instance per hour. This is a great way to try out different types of software. As a software developer, I can go in and I can find out exactly what are the best products in order to build my infrastructure with. As an IT administrator, I can launch monitoring software, VPN software, security software, testing software. We've got lots of developer tools, software infrastructure and business tools that are available to you. Okay, so that's all well and good. That's everything that we have to offer. But how are people using us? How are they benefiting from these services? Because none of this really matters unless we have some customer successes. Well, we've got a lot of customers that are using us for enterprise applications: Oracle, SAP, Microsoft. IBM uses for line of business applications. Capgemini runs its Oracle e-business suite on top of us. AWS, Amazon itself, actually we use it to run SharePoint on top of us. SAP uses us for dev and test environments. A great case study is Shell. Shell's been using us since April of 2010. If you can think about a very large enterprise customer, a customer that has a lot of regulation, has to meet a lot of requirements and certifications, is extremely concerned about security, they're able to use us in a hybrid environment. They use that virtual private cloud product that I talked about earlier and extend their IT infrastructure into the AWS cloud for their development and test environment. And this allows them to gain agility. They don't have to spend any CapEx in order to get this type of benefit. And we meet the security requirements and the regulatory requirements. Ramco, big consulting service. They're able to actually reduce their CapEx and OpEx by 40%, and they're able to serve their global customers. And they're using a lot of our services, and they're able to monitor that through CloudWatch. How about media and web applications? All right. I talked a little bit earlier about Netflix. These guys, 26 million subscribers, 25% of the U.S. internet traffic, almost exclusively running on top of us. Streaming videos to almost 25%, I think, of the U.S. is actually a subscriber at this point. They run massive amount of infrastructure on us, so they're a great customer. They even open source some of their products and make it available to everyone. They have actually built their infrastructure with the idea that you have to build for failure, and they've open sourced one of their inbuilt tools is Chaos Monkey, which randomly turns off different services within AWS to help them provide a resilient architecture. Animoto it's a startup, and what's really interesting about the Animoto app is they were searching for a way to get people to use their product and their service. And what they do is they create videos with your pictures. And in order to get people to use their service, they decided, well, what we'll do is we'll make it so that anybody from Facebook can use our service with the click of a button. And in a period of 3 days, they got so popular, they went from running 50 servers on top of us to running 5,000 servers on us. And through automation, they were able to provision all that information through us. And here's a graph of their provisioning. And if you take a look, they were moving along kind of slowly. They launched their Facebook app, and they peaked at 5,000 instances. And this was automated. This was not guys that were sitting there ordering servers. Can you imagine in the real world, how would you be able to do this? How could you get 5,000 servers brought in-house, configured, racked, stacked, and put up and ready to go in a period of 3 days? Another interesting point, take a little bit look at the end of that graph. They had some of the popularity actually kind of tailed off there. That means they were able to return those servers back to us and no longer pay for them. Well, if you imagine in the old world, after I asked you to rack and stack 5,000 servers, how happy would you be if I said, hey, could you return 2,000 of those servers for a refund? I'm tired of paying for those. NASA uses us, so we're quite big in big data and HPC. If you actually watch the Endeavour when it landed on Mars, they actually NASA dropped an SUV on top of Mars. They streamed that live content that was streamed through our CloudFront product. They store their data through S3 and they process it with a simple workflow on top of us. Nasdaq. The Nasdaq uses us to store real-time financial data. They've got a product called Market Replay in which they allow people to look back at historical trades down to the millisecond. All that runs on Amazon's Simple Storage service. And in fact, recently they just actually launched FinCloud on top of us. Mobile and games, India games and fun games, for example. We've got a lot of different companies on top of us for gaming. India Games, it's the leading online mobile games. They have the T20 Fever game. They're able to run on top of us. Another company in London, Playfish. Playfish recently sold to EA for $300 million, and they don't have any gaming servers available. Fun Plus Games, a really great story. Fun Plus Games are actually based in Beijing, China, but they have a global presence by using AWS, and they're able to meet their customer base. They have between 1 and 3 million hits per month. And they can set up 300 servers by only using one engineer. So as we have a little time left, I'll attack a few of these cloud computing myths, and then we'll have some time at the end here for a few questions. One cloud myth is that the cloud is not reliable. Well, I mean, that's simply not true. Take a look at Amazon's S3 service. That's 11 nines of durability. How would you be able to actually have that type of durability within your own environment? Every time you upload anything within that S3 environment, it's actually replicated across 3 different physical data centers in order to meet that type of durability. We have SLAs available for our services. A lot of our customers say they actually have better performance and better reliability. We're all running on AWS. You can ask yourself, does your company have the ability to provision into multiple data centers? Does it have the ability to run within 9 regions around the world? And security is our #1 priority. Amazon.com runs on top of us. And so we meet these requirements of many of these enterprise customers. But all customers benefit from the fact that we for example, have SOC 1 Type 2 audits, SOC 2 Type 2 audits, ISO 27001, PCI DSS1. You can process credit card transactions on top of us. All of that is provided to you regardless of the size of your organization. And then we provide you tools in which you can make sure that all your data is encrypted during transit and in rest, for example. And I encourage you, if security is a big priority for you, as it should be for everybody, visit our security center. You can see all the different certifications that we have. We have white papers on building secure applications. We're happy to answer any questions about that. And some people think there's the same benefits as running your own private cloud. Well, let me ask you, do you still have to provision hardware when you've got a private cloud environment? Are you still buying software licenses? Do you have elasticity? What happens when you're not utilizing that software? Are you able to return that hardware, that software back to the vendor when you're not using it? Are you still having to deal with undifferentiated heavy lifting? Okay, so how do you get started? It's actually pretty easy. You can go to our website, aws.amazon.com, and create an account. You'll see that there's actually a free tier. If you take a look, you go to /free, you can see everything included in that free tier. You can run a micro-compute instance for an entire year for free. You can try out many of the different services, such as RDS, S3. You can try out CloudFront, all within that free tier. And there'll be no termination fees. There's no commitments. You can do everything that you want. You can return that capacity back to us anytime you want to. So that's the presentation. Here's my contact information. If you've got any questions, there's my Twitter handle. We've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Let me just go ahead and get that started. You can just ask those questions through the webinar control panel there. I'm just going through the questions here. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay, here's a question from Vikas. How easy are the tutorials to get started? I see some of the videos are quite old, not very interactive, and they're kind of boring. I'm sorry that some of the videos are boring. In fact, some of them are probably me. But we do have several sources for you. First of all, depending on where you are, we do actually have a lot of training seminars that come into town. For example, within Australia, we're doing this Lunch and Learn series in which you can come and you can hear us talk over the lunch period. We have a YouTube channel that you can go to. We also have a SlideShare channel if you go to slideshare.net and you look up AWS. And we have a lot of walkthroughs. And just kind of stay tuned, hearing about more training and some things that are coming in the future. I think you'll find there's a lot of different opportunities to learn more about AWS. And you can reach out to us too if you've got questions. There's forums in which you can ask questions to. What is equivalent clustering in AWS where my SQL service never goes down even during switchover? So you've got a few options. Databases, this is from Dear Singh. Databases are a bit harder to scale. One option you've got is if you're using our RDS, or Relational Database Service, and you're using MySQL or Oracle, you can actually do a multi-AZ option in which we run a hot standby in another availability zone. And if anything happens and it needs to fail over, we will fail that endpoint over for you automatically. If you're using SQL Server, you've got a couple of options there too. One of the options is you can use SQL Server's own hot standby, in which you have 3 SQL Server instances where one SQL Server is acting as a witness and will let you fail over. Another interesting way to do this is we've got something called the Elastic Network Interface, or ENI. And with the ENI, you can actually have all your services go to this Elastic Network Interface. We'll put an IP on that ENI, and you have your apps go to that. And that ENI can be attached to whatever your single point of failure is, be it SQL Server or maybe a monolithic application. And were there to have anything happen to that and you've got a hot standby, you can programmatically actually just move that interface over to that backup instance. And this allows you to actually build highly available architectures without being dependent on a particular vendor solution. Okay, here we go. I have an AMI that was created in the Northeast Virginia zone. I would like to create instances on that image. How can I move that? How can I move that to other availability or other regions? Sorry. So we actually just launched a new service. I believe that launched Monday in the U.S. That you can copy your AMIs. If you have your own AMIs, you can copy those between. Is there an indication on average costing? So we have a couple of tools that are available to help you estimate your costing. We have a simple cost calculator that's available on our website. You should be able to see that, or you can just search for simple cost calculator. That will tell you, given how many compute resources that you have, what your estimated bill is going to be. We also have a total cost of ownership calculator, where if you want to compare what it would cost to do the same type of environment within a traditional infrastructure, it will actually compare those two out and tell you what your cost would be in the Amazon environment. How secure are EC2 instances from being compromised, and what happens to the user data when the instance is terminated? So within EC2, for example, we actually don't have the ability to go inside your EC2 instance. When you create an EC2 instance, you within your client computer on your own premises will generate a public and private key. You will upload the public key to us automatically in the background, but you will retain that private key. We actually have no way to get within your own EC2 instance. Additionally, you've got your own security safeguards. You can create security groups, and you can think of these as very flexible firewalls. So EC2 instances by default have all the ports turned off. It is up to you to open those ports, and you can open those ports to specific IP addresses. You can open those ports to other security groups within our infrastructure. And that way you can make sure that everything is locked down. Whenever you terminate an EC2 instance, when it comes to storage within AWS, when you return storage to us, we actually do a Department of Defense wipe across that storage. And so no other customer will ever be able to see any kind of remnants of any kind of storage left over. Additionally, within our own data centers, as another security measure, no storage leaves our data center in any kind of working order. So we destroy everything. Sorry, just going through a few of these questions. Can you elaborate what you mean by data to Amazon is free? So when it comes to data transfer, when it comes to ingress data, data coming into Amazon, we don't charge anything for transferring data into us. When it comes to streaming data out of us, you know, if you have people accessing public data on your S3 buckets, or you're pulling down data from S3, or you're using our content delivery network, we do charge on a per gigabyte per month on the transfer of that. And all those rates are available online and up front. For high usage, we do have discount tiers also available. What allows you to scale up EC2 instances without a person involved? This is from Jeff. So you've got a couple of choices with that. If you've got an application which can scale out horizontally, which means you design an application in which as you add more compute capacity, you can service more users. We've got a product, it's called auto scaling, in which you can tell us, hey, I want to have a minimum of maybe 2 servers running across 2 different availability zones, and I want you to scale up to maybe 50 servers, depending on what the average CPU is across the entire server farm. That's auto scaling. Additionally, if you deploy it to Beanstalk, that actually comes built in for free, in which you can tell us the maximum and minimum number of servers you want to run your infrastructure and what kind of rule you want us to scale up on, whether it's latency or the amount of aggregate CPU. If you do not have an application that can scale out horizontally like that, you still have the option of having an application which can scale up vertically, which means if you've got an application that's running perhaps in kind of a medium instance, for example, you can relaunch that application in a larger instance when you require more compute power, and then perhaps maybe on the weekend when you don't need to have that much compute power, you can relaunch that instance into a smaller instance and save more money. What is the difference between EBS, S3, and Glacier? So EBS is actually a block-level storage. You can think of this as a network-attached storage. This is actually the hard drive, for example, that you attach to your EC2 instance. So in kind of the Windows paradigm, you could think of this as a D drive in which you provision and attach to your computer. So this is what EC2 will talk to and to store files. S3 is object storage. So you actually, for example, you send an entire object up to us for storage. So you think of that as uploading files into kind of a website. Glacier is similar to S3. It meets the same durability as S3, but the cost is much lower. And that's because this is cold storage. If you upload something into S3, it may take you 3 to 5 hours, for example, to pull that data back. And so for this is stuff that you would actually perhaps put onto tape, and you need just an occasional access to it. And that's how we got that price point so low. How would this benefit a startup company? Oh, good question. So we have a really great pedigree with startups. Startups find, you know, as a startup, you've got really 2 resources that are very scarce, and that's time and money. And if you think about your time, if you're on the technical side, do you want your time being spent provisioning databases? Do you want to administer databases? Do you want to patch them and back them up? Or do you want to spend your time working on your minimum viable product or the prototype or your pitch that you're going to need to your investors? And think about time. How fast can you provision that database? How fast can you actually create that application? Do you want to spend your time, you know, involved setting up search servers, or do you need search available to your customer base? And so I think we're just a great platform for startups. Take a look at startups like Pinterest, for example, Dropbox. Within Australia, Filter Squad, for example. We have a vast range of startups because these are people who don't have time to set up all this infrastructure. I think undifferentiated heavy lifting for startups is even a bigger problem than it is for enterprises. Here we go. How do you take care of the regulatory issues related to where data is residing? So when it comes to data, you'll see that I said we've got these 9 regions around the globe. We will never move data between these regions. And so people will pick a different region, for example, the EU or Singapore or the US, because they may have geopolitical reasons to do so. And so, for example, if you want to put your data in Australia, that data will only stay in Australia. You have data sovereignty within Australia, and we won't ever move that data around. You have the tools to move that around yourself. That is your choice, but we won't do that. And that allows you to maintain data sovereignty. Sorry, I'm just looking through a few of these. In what way does spot instances reduce costs of usage? So I didn't talk about spot instances that much, or I didn't talk about it at all. Spot instances, we have a spot market within AWS, and spots are the excess capacity that we have available within the cloud. These are not instances that anyone's using. And what you can do with spot instances is you can bid on the price. And generally what will happen is the price will come out to maybe a third to a quarter of the normal cost of using EC2. So you have a lot of customers who benefit from this cost reduction. The caveat with that is that we can pull that resource from you with very little notice. And so we're not guaranteeing you that resource. So what we have a lot of customers do, for example, is if they're doing rendering, maybe they're processing pictures, and they dedicate maybe 10 machines to that. They can add 40 spot instances to that rendering farm. So if they lose an instance, they don't really care, but it means that their overall cost will be lower. Those 10 on-demand instances will be running a shorter amount of time. And the spot instances actually cost less. So people use spot instances generally to augment their overall workflow, their overall server farms. Okay, we're starting to run a little bit out of time. I'll try to get one more question in here. If you get a chance to stick it out to the end, there will be a survey which will pop up. And if you could just fill that survey out, we will also award everyone who fills that survey out $25 US in AWS credits. So let me just get one more in here. Let's see what we get here. Okay, can I start with an on-demand instance and then move a reserved instance a few months later after evaluating my needs better? Absolutely. So reserved instances, with a reserved instance, you can pay us a one-time upfront fee for a reduced cost. So a lot of customers will find a big cost savings in using a reserved instance. This is a commitment. You're telling us that you want to use a certain size instance in a certain availability zone. Many customers, they move to reserved instances once they understand their workflow a bit better. The great thing about reserved instances, though, it's purely an accounting function. If you're running an instance, you purchase a reserved instance. If those types match, you will automatically start to get that reserved instance pricing. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to restart automatically. Well, guys, we're just running out of time. I'm going to have to wrap it up. I apologize if I wasn't able to answer everybody's questions, but I appreciate you guys listening to me. Please, if you get a chance there, go ahead and fill out our survey. You can follow me on Twitter, and I'll be sure to update with different events, more webinars that are coming up, and any other type of events you might find interesting. We did actually just recently announce our summits, which are coming across Asia Pacific. You'll also find details on that on our webpage. So once again, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, and thanks. Bye.